The security guard had just grabbed my arm when I heard footsteps behind us. Fast ones. The kind that mean someone's about to have a very bad day. I'm Jack Morrison, 56 years old, and I've been in enough tight spots to know when things are about to get interesting. 20 years as a Marine, another 18 climbing the finance ladder from security guard to where I am now. Tonight, I was just trying to do my job at a veterans charity gala. Simple enough, right? Wrong. Let him go. Now, the voice belonged to Daniel Pierce, Aurora Defense Technologies head of investor relations, former Navy guy. You can always tell we carry ourselves differently. The guard's grip loosened like he'd touched a live wire. The woman who'd been giving me grief, Victoria Ashford, the CEO's wife, crossed her arms and gave Daniel a look that could freeze coffee. "He's sitting at the wrong table," she said. "Cold as January in Chicago. We're handling this appropriately." Daniel didn't let her finish. "Ma'am, with respect, you're the one who doesn't understand what's happening here." The whole VIP section went quiet. You know that moment when a room full of people suddenly realizes they might be watching something important. This was it. Phones were still recording. The charity gala was being live-streamed to investors and donors across the country. Daniel turned to address the crowd that had gathered. Several people were holding up their phones. The cameras mounted on the ceiling were still rolling. "Let me clarify something," he said, pointing at me. "This is Jack Morrison." My name dropped into that fancy ballroom like a brick through a window. A couple people glanced down at the place card in front of my seat. JM. Pretty simple. Daniel kept going. His voice was steady but carried enough edge to cut through the classical music. "He's the final authorization representative from Titan Defense Capital for the Aurora Defense Technologies transaction." Complete silence. Someone at the next table slowly lowered their phone. Daniel took a step closer to Victoria. In simpler terms, he said, he's the person who has to sign off on releasing the $3.2 billion in capital funding. He paused to let that sink in. If he says no, the deal we're announcing tonight doesn't exist. I watched Victoria's face change. It was like watching someone realize they'd just kicked a hornet's nest. Monica Whitfield, her society friend who'd been backing her play, took a small step back. Across the room, someone whispered something that sounded like "holy shit." I adjusted my collar pin, old habit from the core, and looked directly at Victoria. Kept my voice level. "Ma'am, I tried to tell you. You're making a significant tactical error." Nobody laughed. Not Victoria, not Monica, not anyone with a phone pointed our way. For the first time since this whole thing started, everyone in that ballroom understood that the guy they'd just tried to remove from table 3 was the one person standing between Aurora Defense Technologies and $3.2 billion. The music was still playing somewhere in the background, but nobody was listening anymore. The air around our table felt thick enough to cut with a knife. That's when Adrian Ashford showed up. "What's the situation here?" he asked, walking into the VIP section with the kind of confidence that comes from running a major defense contractor. He was probably expecting to glad hand some investors before giving his speech about supporting our veterans. Instead, he found his wife standing next to a VIP table, looking like she'd swallowed something sour, Monica unusually quiet. 2 security guards backing away from me like I had the plague. Daniel Pierce and the company's legal counsel standing in the crowd with expressions that meant this problem had just become very expensive. And phones. Lots of phones, all still recording. Adrian stopped walking. "Can someone explain what just happened?" The silence stretched long enough for those live stream cameras to capture every second of it. Finally, Daniel spoke up. Clear enough for the microphones to catch every word. "Your wife just had security physically remove the person responsible for Titan Defense Capital's final authorization from his assigned seat." Adrian turned to look at me, then back at Daniel. I could see him doing the math. This wasn't some social misunderstanding at a charity event. This was business risk. Documented business risk on camera. Victoria was still irritated. I thought he was just some ex-soldier who didn't belong here. He said he was in the right seat, but clearly Victoria. Adrian's voice wasn't loud, but it cut her off like a blade. He didn't look at her again. Instead, he focused on me. "Mr. Morrison," he said carefully, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding." I didn't respond immediately. Just stood there, feeling the weight of 18 years in this business. 20 years before that teaching me about respect and chain of command. Adrian was shifting into damage control mode, the mode CEOs use when billions are suddenly at risk. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." Monica jumped in, forcing a smile that looked painful. Exactly. This is just a small mix-up. Naomi Fletcher, Aurora's general counsel, stepped forward. Her voice was quiet, but it landed like a warning shot. This was recorded. Adrian's eyes moved across the ceiling cameras, then across all the phones still filming from every angle. Live stream, archived footage, a room full of witnesses. I straightened my collar pin again. I know, I said calmly. Adrian looked at me longer this time, long enough to understand something his wife still hadn't figured out. What had just happened wasn't simply bad behavior at a party. It was documented conduct. The kind that lawyers write clauses about, the kind investors remember, the kind that can quietly destroy a $3.2 billion deal before the dessert course. After a few minutes of damage control attempts at the VIP table, Daniel suggested we move to the hotel's executive conference room, quieter space, away from the cameras and the crowd. The door closed behind us. 4 people sat across from me at a mahogany table that probably cost more than most people's cars. Adrian Ashford, Daniel Pierce, Naomi Fletcher, Paul Rodriguez, Aurora's CFO, Victoria and Monica weren't invited. The door had closed on them like a line being drawn between social theater and serious business. Nobody spoke for a moment. The silence in that room felt heavier than artillery fire. Adrian finally broke it. Mr. Morrison, this was a misunderstanding. Wrong word choice. Misunderstandings don't usually involve security guards and public confrontations. Naomi wasn't looking at him, neither was I. Misunderstandings don't generally require physical intervention, I said. Adrian looked down at the table. He was searching for words that wouldn't make this worse. My wife believed that you were. He stopped there. Whatever word he'd been about to use would have sounded even worse out loud. I didn't help him finish. Instead, I asked a different question. Was tonight's event being live-streamed to your investor base? Silence again, Naomi answered. Yes. She opened a folder in front of her. Internal cameras are recording for our archives. Portions are being broadcast live to our investor and donor networks. She glanced at Adrian before continuing. All footage is permanently archived. I nodded. Then I brought up something that seemed to be remembered clearly only by me. In the investment agreement between Aurora Defense Technologies and Titan Defense Capital, I said, turning a page in my folder, there's a section called the character fitness provision. Paul frowned. He remembered the clause. Probably figured it would never matter. I continued. That provision states that any conduct by senior leadership or affiliated representatives that materially damages the reputation or character fitness of the transaction during the agreement period may trigger the fund's right to immediate capital withdrawal. Nobody moved. Paul slowly reached for his copy of the agreement. His finger found a section about halfway down page 14, section 18, he said quietly. Naomi leaned closer. Her expression changed as she read the language again. It doesn't require intent, she said. Only documented conduct that reflects on character fitness standards. Adrian's eyes moved between them. Are you saying Naomi cut him off? I'm saying the incident that just occurred downstairs qualifies as documentation under federal character fitness requirements for defense contractors. The room got even quieter. Adrian leaned back slowly. His mind was running through the chain of consequences. His wife, who held major shares in the company. Security acting under company authority, a public confrontation with a military veteran at a veterans charity event. Dozens of cameras recording every second. What had happened at table 3 wasn't just a moment of social rudeness anymore. It was evidence. Evidence that could trigger character fitness reviews for their government contracts. I closed my folder. This provision exists for exactly these situations. Paul looked down at the agreement again. Naomi stared at the ceiling like she was watching the whole scene replay in her head. Adrian sat very still. Finally, he understood the critical point. The deal hadn't been canceled. Not yet. But right now, it was balanced on the edge of a cliff that led straight down to a $3.2 billion loss and potential government contract reviews. Let me tell you something about my job that most people don't understand. I'm not the kind of person who shows up on magazine covers or gives speeches at conferences. My name doesn't appear in press releases. Most deals, I'm not even in the room when hands get shaken and photos get taken. My job isn't to be seen. My job is to control the money. And in my experience, that arrangement makes powerful people very uncomfortable. They prefer money with a face they recognize and a hierarchy they understand. At Titan Defense Capital, my official title is Senior Investment Compliance Director. Doesn't sound like much, does it? Most people hear that and think paperwork, regulatory checklists. signatures on documents nobody reads carefully. But in large defense contracts, that position exists for a very specific reason. Major investment funds don't allow their executives to release billions of dollars on their own. Not in the defense sector. Too much government oversight. Too many character fitness requirements. There has to be an independent layer of control. Someone responsible for confirming that every condition, financial, legal, and character-based, has actually been met. Someone who can stop the money if those conditions aren't satisfied. With Aurora Defense Technologies, that person was me. The $3.2 billion capital commitment was structured in multiple tranches. The first tranche, the initial $800 million, could only be released once final character fitness authorization was confirmed. That signature didn't belong to our CEO, didn't belong to our board. It belonged to me. I've been doing this job for 15 years. Before that, I did risk assessment in the Marines. That's where I learned how quickly massive operations can collapse. Not because of equipment failure or strategic errors, because of people. Leaders who thought the mission would always be there, command structures where arrogance quietly replaced judgment, situations where powerful people treated basic respect as optional. Titan Defense Capital learned that lesson in the defense sector a long time ago. That's why the character fitness provision exists in Aurora's contract. Not because we expect problems, but because sometimes the way a company treats people, especially veterans, on camera tells you more about their leadership than any financial statement ever could. I looked across that table at Adrian Ashford. He was still trying to calculate how a 30-second confrontation at a charity gala had suddenly become a legal discussion about a $3.2 billion investment and potential government contract reviews. I spoke slowly. Money doesn't leave the account just because someone wants it to. I closed my folder. It leaves when the person responsible believes the company meets character fitness standards. Nobody interrupted. Paul stared down at the agreement. Naomi stayed very still. Adrian said nothing. In that silence, I could see the exact moment he finally understood the most important thing. I wasn't just a guest at this gala. I wasn't some ex-Marine sitting quietly in the background. I was the final gate their money had to pass through. And right now, that gate was locked. I left the conference room a few minutes later. Nobody tried to stop me. Naomi had said the legal team would review all the footage. Adrian had mentioned they needed time to clarify the situation. I simply nodded. We'll need time to review as well. The hotel hallway was quiet. The sound of the gala had faded to background noise. I stopped beside a window overlooking the city and took out my phone. There was only one person I needed to call. Richard Hoffman picked up on the second ring. Jack. Richard, I need to report a character fitness incident. I described what had happened at the VIP table. No emotion, no exaggeration, just the facts. CEO's wife, major shareholder, security, public confrontation, cameras, disrespect for military service at a veterans charity event. Richard stayed quiet through the entire explanation. When I finished, he asked one question. Was it documented? I looked up. The hallway security camera was still recording. Yes, the line went quiet. Richard understood exactly what that meant. Meanwhile, behind the closed doors of that conference room, Aurora Defense Technologies was beginning a very expensive night. Adrian was already calling board members. Paul was reopening the investment agreement. Naomi was reviewing every line of the character fitness provision. Within minutes, an emergency board call was being set up. Directors joining from their homes, airports, some from the gala itself, stepping into quiet corners with their phones, because this deal had been major news in the defense sector. Part of tonight's gala had been live-streamed to investors and government officials. If footage of what happened at Table 3 surfaced in the wrong places, the damage would travel far beyond this ballroom. Adrian found me in the hallway about 10 minutes later. Jack, he said, I know what happened back there wasn't appropriate.
That was the closest he could get to describing it. If you could give us until morning to sort this out. I looked at him. I'm not issuing ultimatums.
I'm just doing my job. He studied my face for a moment, trying to decide if the situation was still recoverable, trying to calculate how much time he had left. Then he nodded and walked back toward the conference room. Richard's voice came through the phone, low and steady. If the character fitness provision has been triggered, he paused, then we have to act. The next morning, Aurora Defense Technologies woke up to a completely different world. The first notification reached Paul Rodriguez at 6:47 a.m. An email from Titan Defense Capital, short, formal, and final. Titan Defense Capital withdraws its commitment under the character fitness provision. Paul read the sentence once, Then again, then a third time, the primary tranche minus $3.12 billion had been removed from Aurora's financial structure, just like that. Within minutes, his phone started buzzing. Board members, partner banks, legal advisors, government contract officers, all asking the same question. What the hell happened? The executive conference room filled up fast. Adrian stood at the head of the table, staring at his laptop screen. He'd known this could happen. Naomi had warned him. Paul had shown him the provision. But knowing something was possible and watching it happen are two very different experiences. He called me. Second call since last night. Jack, he said. His voice sounded rough. We can fix this. Issue a joint statement. Clarify what actually happened. I didn't interrupt. Let him finish. It was recorded on camera. Silence on his end lasted several seconds. In the background, I could hear voices. Urgent ones. Jack, Paul's voice came through the speaker. The primary tranche has been withdrawn. The other commitments in the financing structure are beginning to collapse with it. A voice in the background said something about government contracts under review. Nobody disagreed. Phones kept ringing. Banks, law firms, government offices that had expected the Aurora transaction to close within weeks. Outside their building, pre-market indicators for Aurora Defense Technologies began to slide. News that a major capital fund had withdrawn from the company's largest deal in years was spreading faster than any explanation Adrian could provide. In that conference room, the reality was settling in hard. This deal wasn't delayed. It wasn't being renegotiated. It was gone. I didn't celebrate. No sense of victory. Just a chain of consequences unfolding exactly the way they were designed to. A few hours later, an internal notice went to Aurora's senior leadership. One line. The Titan Defense Capital transaction is terminated. The story hit financial news sites by noon. Nobody mentioned the Gala. Nobody mentioned Table 3. The headlines focused on the numbers. Major defense contractor loses $3.2 billion investment over character fitness concerns. For the market, that was all that mattered. Inside Aurora Defense Technologies, the consequences kept coming. The board launched an internal investigation. Directors wanted to know exactly what had happened, who had authorized security to remove a capital representative from his assigned seat, and how the largest deal the company had pursued in years had collapsed overnight. Outside the company, the story spread through quieter channels. Footage from the Gala circulating through veteran networks, defense industry groups, encrypted chats among military contractors. The names Victoria Ashford and Monica Whitfield started appearing in conversations they probably never expected to be part of. Not as hosts of a charity gala, but as the people who had turned a $3.2 billion investment into a character fitness crisis. Several Aurora board members reached out to me over the following days. They talked about reforms, new oversight structures, different leadership approaches, modified terms. I gave them all the same answer, polite, brief, and unchanged. A deal doesn't collapse because of a party. It collapses because of what that party reveals about character. A week later, I was back in my office. Everything looked exactly the same as before. No press conference, no victory announcement. Just new emails, new files, new deals waiting to be evaluated. My daughter called me that evening. She's in her second year at Northwestern, studying business. Dad, I saw the story online about what happened at that charity thing. And I'm proud of you. That meant more than any deal ever could. Sarah's 20 now and smart as hell. Reminds me of her mother every day. Linda would have approved of what I did. She always said respect wasn't something you inherited. It was something you earned. One of my colleagues asked me about the Aurora situation the next day. How it felt to cost a major corporation $3.2 billion over what some people were calling a social misunderstanding. I shrugged. People think power always walks into a room with a title and a business card. Sometimes it sits quietly at the end of the table and waits to see how people behave. I closed the file in front of me. Because in this business, respect isn't a courtesy, it's a requirement. The fallout from Aurora continued for months. Stock price dropped 38% in the first week. The Defense Department launched a character fitness review of their government contracts. 3 board members resigned within 2 weeks. Victoria Ashford stepped down from her positions on several charity boards. Monica Whitfield found herself quietly disinvited from the social circles she'd worked so hard to join. Turns out, people in high society don't like being associated with someone who cost their husbands billions of dollars. But the most interesting development came 6 weeks later. I was reviewing a new proposal when Richard walked into my office. "Jack, we've got something unusual." He placed a folder on my desk. "Baxter Industrial wants us to evaluate their acquisition target. Defense contractor out of Georgia. They specifically requested you handle the character fitness review." I opened the folder. The company name was familiar. I'd heard good things about their leadership. They mentioned the Aurora situation. Richard continued, said they want someone who actually enforces standards. Over the next few months, 3 more companies made similar requests. Word travels fast in the defense sector. Apparently, there are executives who prefer working with someone who takes character fitness seriously over someone who rubber stamps deals. My reputation in the industry changed. Before Aurora, I was the quiet guy who handled compliance paperwork. After Aurora, I became the guy who actually meant business when it came to standards. The irony wasn't lost on me. Victoria Ashford's attempt to put me in my place had actually elevated my standing in the industry. Her husband's company lost $3.2 billion, but my career got a significant boost. I started getting invitations to speak at defense industry conferences. Character fitness in federal contracting, compliance as competitive advantage. Topics I never thought I'd be presenting to rooms full of executives. But I turned most of them down. My job isn't to be famous, it's to do the work. About 3 months after the Aurora incident, I ran into Daniel Pierce at Reagan National Airport. He was catching a flight to Seattle for a new job. Apparently his reputation had taken a hit for not preventing the Gala disaster. "Jack," he said, walking over to where I was sitting, "I wanted to thank you." That surprised me. Thank me for handling that night professionally. A lot of people would have made it personal. You kept it business. We talked for a few minutes before his flight was called. He mentioned that Adrian Ashford had stepped down as CEO the previous month. The board decided they needed fresh leadership after the character fitness controversy. I felt bad for Daniel. Good man caught in a bad situation. But that's how these things work. When character fitness becomes an issue, it affects everyone in the chain of command. 6 months later, Aurora Defense Technologies was acquired by a larger contractor at a significant discount. The character fitness issues had permanently damaged their ability to compete for major government contracts. Sometimes the market decides consequences before the lawyers do. I kept working, kept evaluating deals, kept enforcing standards that some people think don't matter until they suddenly do. The defense industry is smaller than people realize. Word gets around. Executives talk. And apparently the word about me was that I'm someone who actually cares about the standards we're supposed to uphold. My daughter graduated summa cum laude last spring. Business degree, like her old man. She's starting at a consulting firm in Chicago this fall. During her graduation dinner, she brought up the Aurora story again. "Dad, do you ever regret what you did? I mean, a lot of people lost their jobs." I thought about that for a moment. "Sarah, in the Marines, we had a saying, standards you walk past are standards you accept. If I had let that slide, what would that say about every other standard we're supposed to enforce?" She nodded. Smart kid, gets it. Besides, I added, those people didn't lose their jobs because I enforced a contract provision. They lost their jobs because their leadership failed a basic character fitness test. The veteran community followed the Aurora story closely. Several Marine buddies reached out after it hit the news. Most of them weren't surprised that I'd held my ground. They knew me from the old days. But they were surprised that a civilian company had paid such a steep price for disrespecting military service. Guess the business world has standards after all. One of them said, "Some do, some don't. My job is to figure out which is which." These days, when I walk into a room for a deal evaluation, the atmosphere is different. More respectful, more careful. Word has gotten around that the quiet guy from Titan Defense Capital actually has teeth. That's fine by me. Respect shouldn't be something you have to demand. But if you do have to demand it, you better be prepared to back it up. Stories like this tend to travel quietly through the defense industry. People hear them, argue about them, and eventually ask the same question. At what exact moment did the deal actually die? Was it when the security guard grabbed my arm? When the cameras kept recording? When nobody at that table thought to stop it before it went too far? I know the answer. It died the moment Victoria Ashford decided that a 56-year-old Marine veteran didn't deserve basic respect at a veterans charity gala. The seat at table 3 that night was just a chair, but the way they took it cost them $3.2 billion. Sometimes the most expensive lessons are the simplest ones. I'd like to hear what you think about this story. At what point do you think Aurora Defense Technologies crossed the line? Was it the initial confrontation, the security involvement, or something else entirely? And in your own workplace or business dealings, have you ever seen respect and character standards actually enforced when it counted? Your thoughts and experiences matter. They help all of us understand where the real lines are drawn in professional relationships. Drop a comment and let me know, because at the end of the day, we all have to decide what standards we're willing to walk past and what standards we're willing to defend.
Don't pity me. My heart doesn't need your mercy. I can still stand on my own. I was broken by your leaving, fell deeper than I thought I would. But pain has taught me how to heal now and survive what once I couldn't. You don't have to look back sadly, don't reach out with guilty hands. What you shattered made me stronger. Now I rise where I once collapsed. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. I once begged for your affection. Now I've learned my worth in scars. And the man you left in pieces found his own way through the dark. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. So keep your sympathy behind you. I don't need what's left undone. Sometimes losing who once broke you is how healing has begun. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll rise alone again. I'll rise alone again.
They say just forget. Move on like it's easy. But forgetting you feels like remembering someone I've never seen. I've been trying to erase you from the places in my mind, but the harder that I fight it, the more you're hard to leave behind. Every memory keeps slipping through the cracks I try to close, like a face I should remember, but somehow never know. Forgetting you feels impossible, like chasing something I can't hold, like trying to remember someone that I've never even known. I keep reaching through the silence for a past I can't undo. 'Cause letting go of what we had feels like losing something true. Every moment turns to fragments, every thought just fades to blue. Like I'm searching for a feeling that still only leads to you. Forgetting you feels impossible, like chasing something I can't hold, like trying to remember someone that I've never even known. I keep reaching through the silence for a past I can't undo. 'Cause letting go of what we had feels like losing something true. But now every empty moment still reminds me what is real. Forgetting you feels impossible, like chasing something I can't hold, like trying to remember someone that I've never even known. I keep reaching through the silence for a past I can't undo. 'Cause letting go of what we had feels like losing something true.